something to contribute.
That's very important. Let's talk about the latest. The Office of a Special Prosecutor is having challenges with the Finance Minister. As we speak, he's been declared wanted. I'm sure you heard the press conference. Your take on the development between the two, as in the Office of a Special Prosecutor and then the former Finance Minister?
Well, I think the first fundamental principle is that there is a recognition by all of us. And when I mean all of us, I mean all of us who've ever had the privilege and opportunity to serve, that at some stage, whether whilst you are still in office or when you're outside office, you may be called upon to account. So that's the first fundamental point. And I believe that all of us are awake to that fundamental principle. The former finance minister, I do know, is equally awake to that.
Okay.
The Office of the Special Prosecutor was established by our government. Therefore, we believe in the mandate of that office, and that is why we established that office. Now, having said that, I think it's also important for us to make the point, and do so forcefully, that a man, and by that I mean a man in a generic sense, a man is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
And so, for example, Mr. Oforiatta could appear before the Special Prosecutor and take the position that he will not speak to the Special Prosecutor. He is not obliged to speak to the Special Prosecutor by law.
By law, okay.
You know, so a man is innocent until proven guilty, and a man is not, by law, a man cannot be compelled to implicate himself or herself. And so Mr. Oforiatta could appear before the Special Prosecutor and say, I will not answer any question, or I will not cooperate.
Okay.
He could be charged and put before court, and then he will say he will not mount any defense, and that the prosecutor should adduce evidence which will be sufficient to either implicate him or otherwise. So I'm still struggling with the need or the necessity for him to appear personally, you know,
to answer questions.
And here I'm speaking as a lawyer, and the Special Prosecutor was my lecturer. He taught me criminal law. So, I mean, I'm not sure why he has to appear personally, you know.
But in criminal matters, don't you actually need the presence of the accused to be there?
People can be investigated in absentia, and they can be prosecuted in absentia. And finally, I think also that to the extent that the former finance minister is supposed to have provided evidence of his state of health, I think we need some balancing act, because we all can fall sick. So this is my take on it.
But I think the office also got doubts about the report of the state of health. That's also another issue.
Why will the former finance minister lie? I mean, I don't know, but I will be damn surprised if it turns out that the evidence he has put before the Special Prosecutor is not credible. I'll be extremely surprised.
All right. And not forgetting that he was the same person we gave the timeline to, the former finance minister, not the Office of a Special Prosecutor.
Yes, I think in this kind of situation, they should probably find a middle ground of a sort where the Special Prosecutor can do his work and exercise his mandate at the same time in a manner that will not unnecessarily and unduly compromise the health of the former finance minister. I think that, I mean, the point I made initially is a very important point, which is that accountability is very key. I mean, being in public office cannot be like checking into a hotel and checking out. Even there, you still be asked questions before you leave. And also the fact that he's supposed to be unwell, and the other point I made about the investigations can most probably proceed without his being present physically, and so on and so forth. But I think in these matters, a certain compromise will help.
Okay, all right. Were you part of the members of parliament in the minority that went to Yoko?
No.
You're not part?
I wasn't.
Okay, so you're not part of those who actually demonstrated and were sitting on the floor and all that?
Yes, I was unavoidably absent.
Okay, not in the country.
I was unavoidably absent.
All right, the Ashanti Regional Chairman has been released. There are lots of things that actually went on. Again, you were a lawyer, you're a member of parliament, you're also a member of the minority too. What do you make of the entire processes involved? First of all, his arrest, and then the subsequent release, meeting the bail condition also.
Well, I think what is happening to Chairman Wontumi, in my view, almost is more like the circles we are building in our country, which I think is most unfortunate.
What circles is that?
You've had the situations in the past in previous government, and I don't want to mention specific governments per se, where people have been arrested and their rights have been abused, and their, if you want, due process not followed, and there have been agitations from members of their political party, and it's more or less been take it or leave it. It's happened in the past. I wouldn't give you examples, so many of them. And this mirrors that. It kind of mirrors that culture where a government comes into office and someone is arrested, the person is taken through a certain process which raises fundamental questions of due process, human rights violations, and so on and so forth. But in all cases, the response is that, look, it happened before, and therefore you have no right to complain. I think a democracy where the rule of law works, respect for human rights and due process is adhered to, works for all of us. You know the story of Adolf Hitler in Germany, where it was said that he picked this person, nobody spoke, and until those who were quiet, who were silent, also became victims of his machine. So I think it's important that what is right, what is wrong is wrong. I don't know what crime is being, even if a heinous crime is being investigated, an accused person or a person who is being investigated is entitled to bail.
Yes.
Unless and only when there is reasonable grounds that this person will abscond, or this person will become a fugitive, or that he will not appear to answer questions, or he will not appear to stand trial when the need arises. I don't know where Chairman.
But was he denied? Was he denied bail?
Well, first of all, the bail conditions in themselves were unreasonably onerous, and it was it will appear very clearly that the bail condition was set in a way that will make it very, very difficult for him to meet.
But this is the first time we actually set in a bail condition.
Like you set the bail condition based on first of all the severity of the crime. Secondly, whether or not such a person has the tendency to abscond. I'm not too sure Chairman Wuntimi has anywhere to go other than being in Ghana here. And I don't know what the severity of the crime. I mean, we've been told of money laundering, and we've been told the amount
international crimes involving.
I just take the view that there must come a time when this political persecution or victimization and show of power will end.
So you think what's happening is persecution, victimization, and show of power, not because someone is being called to be accountable?
Well, being called to be accountable is one thing.
Okay.
But also being taken through due process and being dealt with in a manner which does not smack of show of power, which does not smack of, we want to teach you a lesson, we want to show you where,
has that happened?
We want to show you, it smacks of that. It's marks of that.
Which ones marks of that? Which of the processes? No, which of the processes in which
first of all is detention. You know, he could have been questioned and let to go. Why must he be detained? You have to ask yourself. There must be grounds, and the most important ground, the overarching ground which an investigator will base on to detain a suspect or an accused person. In this case, he's still a suspect. Is if the person will not appear when needed, or the person will abscond. And I'm saying to you that, do you honestly believe that Chairman Wuntimi will abscond out of Ghana? I don't think so.
Well, we can't tell, actually.
Well, why? You should be able to tell. You have all
because recently, when a Dubois case came, the bail condition was above 100 million Ghana cedis, which his lawyer sent to court, that's Atachia, to bring it down to 80 million. So if the condition is the problem, we've had precedents that show that something could have been done about it.
Well, there are people who are suspected to have committed crimes who are given self-recognizance bail based on the factors. When you evaluate the factors, you check their contacts in Ghana, their connections in Ghana, their establishment in Ghana, their standing in society, and all of that. You can come to the conclusion that this person will not go anywhere. When I need him, he will appear before me. Because the only reason why you keep the person is because if you begin the investigations and the person will not appear when the need arises, then you have every right to detain the person and set bail conditions which will make it unattractive for the person to abscond. I'm not too sure Chairman Wuntimi will abscond out of Ghana. Okay. I don't see it.
Let's talk about mining. I mean, you're former minister, you played a critical role in there and to stop this whole problem when it comes to illegal mining. An assessment of your administration and what's really happening now and what's the way forward. First of all, how best would you describe what happened under your administration? Were you able to fight illegal mining, can I say?
Well, what is happening now...
Let's start with under your administration
first.
The
point I'm coming to make will answer that question. What is happening now clearly vindicates some of the positions we took when we were in government.
Okay.
Because we always said, and I was at the forefront of it, we always said that this menace of illegal small-scale mining, Galamsey, is a very complicated matter, which requires a multifaceted approach to deal with it. And that it cannot be dealt with, as our opponents were claiming, just by the snap of the president or by the snap of the minister or by the snap of the government. And that it will require a concerted effort and it will require a certain broad-based collaboration of stakeholders to be able to deal with it. Our opponents said no. They said, for example, that we should declare a state of emergency, and that the state of emergency is what will get us to deal with the matter. And that if they were to be elected into government, they would declare a state of emergency almost immediately. We are 6 months into the administration. They have not declared a state of emergency. Any objective observer of the terrain will come to the conclusion that illegal small-scale mining is worsened. There's absolutely no two ways about that. The evidence abounds.
It's worsened.
It's worsened, of course.
So it was worse under your administration.
I said it's worsened now.
Okay, but that's fair enough. So
the
it's a
situation
progress,
is worsened, and it's clear from all the reports that are coming that there is a certain culture of impunity where leaders of the ruling party believe that this is, the time for them to take control of illegal small-scale mining, and it's happening indiscriminately across the country. Now, so all of these factors. I mean, for example, I read today, I read in the papers that the president is asking that no excavator without permit.
Without permit, yes.
That is already,
he said that
is already the law. The law is clear. We passed a law on earth-moving equipment, which said that you could not import excavator without permit. And that is the law. That's the law as we speak today. So the question obviously has to be about the courage to enforce the law, other than putting in place additional measures when it comes to permitting for excavators in particular and earth-moving equipment in general. So I make all these points just to come to the conclusion that if we are going to deal with illegal small-scale mining, as we said before, first of all, we must eschew partisanship. We must take partisanship out of the equation.
But can we do that?
We have to, because it is only when you take out partisanship that you can deal with your own people.
Because if this government should take out partisanship, the minority will hit at them. The minority will come strongly at them and bring out that partisanship.
No, the minority should not. And I think it would be unpatriotic and unfortunate if the minority were to do that. I don't think the minority will do that.
Okay.
If the government takes bold decisions and take bipartisan approach to dealing with this, I will certainly support the government. And I think the minority will support the government. But clearly, that is not what we are seeing today. I mean, if the president, for example, were to step forward with his government and say, look, we are going to declare a state of emergency, as they committed to do. I took a position about state of emergency. Our government took a position about state of emergency. But the party then and the government today took a very definitive position for the declaration of a state of emergency in dealing with illegal small-scale mining. The courage to rein in leaders of their party, and the evidence is there. In fact, even yesterday, I had a briefing, and it was clear that leading members of the ruling party, some leading members of the ruling party, are alleged to be involved in this illegal small-scale
Which leading members are those?
Well, I wouldn't say that here. But then a series of other interventions which I believe if we deal with them or we implement them with courage and in an objective, bipartisan or non-partisan manner, it will help. The most important thing is, I think, is we've gotten to the stage where we all need to accept that this canker of illegal small-scale mining cannot continue to be political football, where depending on where you stand on the political equation, you take a particular view. No, we should give the government the support that is needed, both the political and whatever support that is required for the government to deal with it. That is the only way we can deal with illegal small-scale mining.
Will the river gas or water gas help in any way?
Well, river gas were launched by our government, by the Kufuor government. My deputy minister, Honorable George Kuduka, was the one who went to the Western region to launch the concept of river guards. And the current government is changing it to blue water center.
Blue water, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. We had community.
But did it work when you had it?
Well, it contributed.
Okay.
It contributed. And that's why I said dealing with illegal small-scale mining cannot be a one-pronged approach. It has to be multifaceted.
Yeah.
You have the price of gold piercing through the roof. We've never had the price of gold at this level. We've never had it this high.
Yeah.
It's now $3,100 US per ounce or so. And so the incentive and the desire or the attraction to mine cannot be higher than now.
Yeah.
Because of the price.
Yes.
Okay. So we require multiple interventions to be able to deal with it. But what is absolutely important, and I will make this point over and over again, a government will not be successful at dealing with illegal small-scale mining when it is being approached from a partisan point of view, either from the opposition or the government. When the government takes the measures that are necessary to deal with the situation, the opposition are up in arms.
Yes.
As our opponents were up in arms then. And when the government finds that its own people are involved, it turns a blind eye. That will not work. It requires a national, non-partisan, multifaceted effort, concerted effort to deal with. And I, more than anybody else, is in a position, and I believe that all of us, stakeholders in the body politic of Ghana, to support the government, support the president, and support the minister, to be able to deal with this.
What's your position on a LI 2462?
Well, you know, that there again is another matter where the government said they will repeal it.
Yes.
You recall that?
Yes, I recall that.
The government did not say they will amend it. The government said they will repeal it.
Yes.
And I made the point at the time in Parliament that it goes beyond just the promise of repealing it. Because the important question that we have to answer is how do we protect the forest reserves of our country? That is at the heart of it. Because LI 2467 became offensive because some persons took the view that this was an LI which was going to give the government unfettered mandate to permit mining in forest reserves. But that is not exactly the case. Because LI 2467 actually is determining places where mining is absolutely proscribed. You know, like if you have cultural heritage areas, places of high biodiversity, and so on and so forth. But the question of mining in forest reserve is already regulated by law. And indeed, nobody is allowed to enter a forest reserve without what is called a forest entry permit issued by the Forestry Commission, by law. Even if you were to enter a forest reserve to pick snails, you require a forest entry permit from the Forestry Commission.
Yes.
So then again, it's also the question of principle. Because the government then said they will repeal LI 2467. And I would say that let's hold their feet to the fire when it comes to the question of honoring their commitments to the Ghanaian people. But beyond that is a discussion or an effort which would truly have us protect the forest reserves of our country.
Will repealing it help us protect the forest reserves of our country?
Well, I mean, I will reserve a comment on that.
Why?
Well, I reserve a comment on that because when you look at the law clearly, okay, the law is subservient. I made that point when we in government. The law is subservient to other statutes. Okay, this is an LI, and this is an LI which is more or less specifying that there are certain no-go areas when it comes to mining.
Yes. Then if you want to go there, the president will have to give you a permit to go there. Yes. And that's the worrying part.
Why?
For the president to allow mining into forest reserves.
No. The law already permits mining in forest reserves.
Okay.
You know that. The law already has a regime when it comes to mining in forest reserves. Newmont is mining in a forest reserve as we speak. There are so many large-scale mining operations, lawful large-scale mining operations ongoing in forest reserves. Now, the question that we should be asking ourselves, though, is whether or not those laws are sufficient to protect the forest reserves of our country.
Okay.
And also the question as to whether or not we should permit mining in forest reserves at all. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and attempt to give answers, okay, because I think it will be self-serving. But it's a question or it's a matter that requires an objective, okay, expert national debate of a sort, whether or not we should have mining in any form or shape, regulated mining in any form or shape in a forest reserve of our country. Yeah.
But at least you've been there before, so you giving us your thoughts on that one too is very important, just to guide the conversation and guide whatever plans that will be taken based on your experience.
Look, the environmental protocols when it comes to mining in forest reserves are the most stringent, and if they were followed, we could actually derive multiple benefits. Okay, because, for example, the environmental rules say that if you mine, say, a hectare in a forest reserve, you are, for example, required to revegetate or reforest, say, 10 hectares.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question is whether or not these protocols are being adhered to, and whether or not they are being enforced. Okay. So if you ask me, I think we have sufficient laws to deal with these areas or to deal with this subject matter of the protection of the forest reserves of our country. The real question has always been implementation. And again, it takes me back to the initial point I made. The real issue takes us to the extent to which we have broad sectorial collaboration. Okay, and all the parts of the machine working in unison. Yeah.
Okay. So just to summarize it, what you're saying is that it's not about repealing or not repealing, but having a plan in place to ensure that what's the best interest for us when it comes to mining, especially in forest reserves. So we can repeal and still have those challenges, and we cannot repeal and also still have those challenges. That's what you're saying.
Well, my point is that we should enforce our laws to protect the forest reserves of our country, but having said that, the government committed to repeal the LI. So let the government repeal it.
Okay.
Let's have them repeal it.
Although repealing it might not solve the problem.
That is the promise they made. Let them repeal. I've told you what we should do, what we should continue to do to be able to come to grips with this matter. But when you go into elections, people take positions and people must be called upon to live up to the commitments they made. The government committed to repeal LI 2467. Let them repeal it.
All right. You talked about gold prices going that high, and that's also motivating some of these illegal activities. There's a new institution in place, the Gold Board, which happens to be the new kid on the block that is making a lot of waves. The president commended the activities of the Gold Board in the recently ongoing mining summit. I think that's something he also talked about. What do you make of the Gold Board, its activities so far, to also help that space in there, especially when it comes to smuggling?
There is a certain background to the establishment of this institution. Over the years, we had never leveraged the mineral resources of our country, particularly the gold resource of our country, for economic growth generally, and also for, if you want, central banking, or what the experts will say, using gold to anchor your currency, to support your currency and all of that. I think it was in 2022 when the then Vice President, Dr. Baumia, mooted the idea for us to have a domestic gold purchase program, and I was at the center of it because the evidence is there, the history is there, the correspondence is all there for anybody to appreciate, where we had to issue several ministerial directives. For example, insist that all large-scale mining gold outputs, 20% of them should be sold to the central bank. The central bank should have the first right of refusal. Section 5 of the Minerals and Mining Act 206 and 703 gives the state the preemptive right, the right of first refusal. So all those regulatory arrangements were put in place for the domestic gold purchase program to begin. which is what is giving us the level of reserves we have at the Central
Bank
Bank
of Ghana. Yeah.
And then, of course, arising out of that was gold for oil and all of that. We are all very familiar with these things. This government is taking the view that they will take that effort, or they will build on the policy of leveraging our gold resources for economic growth and for anchoring our currency to another level, a notch further, which is what has resulted in the establishment of the gold board. When the bill was brought to Parliament, lots of issues were raised, about the contours of this institution. In fact, I do know that some officials of government, particularly officials from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, as currently constituted under this government, equally has some reservations. With the gold board? With the gold board. Not just the gold board as an institution or the concept of the gold board, but the remit of the gold board. I mean, for example, I raised the issue of the issuance of export licenses and whether or not that is going to be taken from the office of the Minister for Natural Resources and now given to the gold board. So all of those were matters which were raised on the floor of Parliament. That said, the effort to leverage our gold resources, to institutionalize it, to have a dedicated institution which will spearhead that effort, I think is something that we should all welcome. There's no two ways about that. It's a commendable move. The issue is always going to be about the implementation and how the implementation is done. Always remember that gold board is mirroring cocoa board.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And cocoa board was established under President Nkrumah. And cocoa board was also established to leverage our cocoa resources for national development. And we all know where cocoa board is today. And we all know to what extent has cocoa board contributed to our national development. So my caution will always be about implementation. And always remember that if you don't implement gold board properly, the problems you are going to have are going to be even dire than the problems we've had over the years in respect of cocoa board. Because cocoa is a bulk product. Cocoa is in bags. Cocoa is loaded in articulated trucks. But you can put $2 million, $3 million worth of gold in a small briefcase. You can put millions of dollars worth of gold on yourself if you want. So smuggling of gold is much, much easier than smuggling of say, cocoa. The final point I like to make is the withholding tax when it came to the export of gold was pegged at some 3% or so. We made a case in the government of President Akufo-Addo, and the withholding tax was reduced from 3% to 1.5%. Withholding tax under this government is being scrapped altogether. So withholding tax today is zero. So that also is contributing to incentivizing the exporters and the traders withholding tax. Togo has at 1%, Burkina has at 1.5%, Mali has at 1%. And so what we sought to do when we're in government, by reducing it from 3% to 1.5%, because the 3% made it worked as an incentive for people to smuggle our gold through Burkina or Togo. Because if you are being asked to pay 3% in Ghana, and you can export from Togo or Burkina Faso at 1% or 1.5%, you must as well do it that way. Now it's 0%. So you can as well imagine.
So there's some advantage there.
There's some advantage, but you can imagine that gold produced in Burkina or Mali may find its way through Ghana out of our shores. So these are
in other words, gold produced in Burkina or Mali smuggled into Ghana.
It's possible
throughout
because of the withholding tax. But that said, as I say, all of it, the concept of building on what the previous government started and leveraging our gold resource and everything, are all very, very well commendable and welcomed. What will always be the test is the implementation when it's all said and done.
But at least so far, the operations, what do you see in terms of the board and what has been raked in so far?
They just started. I mean, we're told, for example, that the reserves we left when we're leaving, not that the ton has been added. So let's wait and see.
Some has been added.
No, not even a ton.
Not even a ton. That's fair enough. That's something,
what the
something
president
that
talked about was the volume of trade. The volume of trading, which he put at 2.7 billion.
2.7 billion,
yes. That's the volume of trading.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it is good that the government is now more or less centralizing the trading. Okay. The government is centralizing the trading of gold produced out of small-scale mining. For me, that is good. But like as I said, implementation is everything. Remember that the Gold Board is a state institution.
Yes.
And the Gold Board is very much at the center of gold trading in Ghana. So the question of implementation down the road will always be the issue. And also remember that the Finance Ministry is funding the Gold Board in this whole trading exercise. And therefore, issues of margins, losses, gains, profits, and all of that are all going to come to play. And we cannot rush to come to conclusion as to whether or not the Gold Board is performing or not. We have to give it some time, and we have to encourage them to implement the policy in a manner that will serve the interests of our country.
So in other words, let's see how gold will perform on international markets some months or years to come. And if the prices actually start dropping and we are still doing well, then we can say that the board is doing well. But for now, because it's high, at least it's okay that for us to rig that much in.
Well, general implementation, issues of transparency,
accountability,
issues of accountability, issues of proprietary in terms of decision making, and so on and so forth, and also the balance of the Gold Board being a state institution, very much planted in a purely private sector driven industry. And what that plays, how that plays along private sector interest. And eventually, when it's all said and done, the position the Gold Board will find itself in terms of its finances, very key. Cocoa Board is always supposed to be our caution.
Okay. The Foreign Affairs Minister closed down our mission in Washington based on some challenges and some allegations raised and based on an audit conducted. You're not happy about that decision. Why?
Well, not so much about being happy or not happy. I think
that was clearly you're not happy about the decision taken by the
question the question is whether the decision was the right one or not. And if you look at the time space within which the mission was closed and when it was open, quite clearly, one cannot help but come to the conclusion that the decision was not well thought through.
Why?
Yeah, the mission was closed within 2 or 3 days.
3 days later, it was reopened.
And we all know why it was reopened, because there was clear, strong agitation from the Ghanaian society out there who were looking for visas and consular services, and as well as foreigners who wanted to visit our country. And that is what we pointed out. The other issue has always been whether or not the grounds which was cited by the ministry, that a certain non-foreign service official who was a contractor of the Ghanaian government or was a contractor of the mission was alleged to have been involved in some malfeasance, who denies it anyway.
He did?
Yeah, he does.
Because in the minister's statement, he said that the man confirmed.
No, but he's issued a statement to deny it. Whether or not that is sufficient grounds to close a whole mission. And thirdly, also the fact that these things are supposed to have happened in the past before, and they've been dealt with differently, and they've been dealt with in a manner which did not occasion the controversy that we are having now. The explanation has also been given that even the service that is being provided by this individual is not one that the Ghanaian government pays for. And more or less that it is a private arrangement for courier services. I mean, I don't want.
But that also justify the alleged.
I don't want to make judgment. I don't want to make judgment on the merits of the allegation at all. My issue or our issue, the Minority Caucus and the Foreign Affairs Committee's issue, has always been that the decision was not well thought through, that it was rushed, and that the grounds that which were cited by the ministry were not sufficient grounds for a whole mission to be closed down.
Okay.
And I think we've been vindicated given the number of days that it took for the mission to be reopened. We believe that this matter could have been dealt with without closing the mission down.
What way would have been the best way to handle a situation like that?
Well, the mission has all kinds of departments. The mission has a trade department, has a security department, has an investment department, have career foreign service officials who are not involved in this alleged malfeasance in any form or shape. So the ministry could have run and people could have been suspended or interdicted on suspicion of having been involved and the matter be investigated. And if anybody was found to be culpable, the person would be punished. But to close down the whole mission, you know, and if I should use the word, the drama surrounding it.
What was the drama? It was just an announcement made.
Well, then 2 days after, then the mission is reopened. So why then close it? Yeah, we think that it was rushed. And I want to believe that if the minister is given a second chance, he will do it differently.
You have any plans, parliamentary-wise, talking to the minister or getting him to come and answer some questions?
We filed an urgent question in Parliament.
For him to come and answer questions?
Yes.
To explain why the closure?
The circumstances that led to the closure.
But although there's a statement to that effect, you disagree with all the things raised in the statement?
Well, but I think that the floor of Parliament will give it the much needed weight, which is why we filed the question in Parliament.
Okay, all right. I mean, you're in Parliament is in session now. What should we expect from the minority?
Well,
in terms of your oversight and all that?
Well, I think it's in the interest of the Ghanaian people and the progress of our country and our democracy that the minority always rises up to the occasion. And the minority takes its responsibilities seriously.
Okay.
Because the concept of checks and balances is what makes a country progress.
Yes.
We have to shed light on the work and business of government. If government business is done in secrecy and in darkness, the citizenry suffer for it. And it is the responsibility or duty of a minority, which is fit for purpose, to shed light on the work of government and to hold government accountable and to exercise oversight on the business of government and to ensure that the government lives up to the correct standards. And I say this for all minorities. You will see that the previous minority did just that.
Yes. But this time, I mean, looking at your numbers, one will wonder how you can perform that role effectively.
Well, sometimes the numbers even turns out to be a disadvantage. Sometimes. For the efficacy of the work, for the efficiency of the work. Sometimes, I don't mean all the time. Sometimes the numbers can be a disadvantage. And other times, the smaller the number, the more resolute the group may be.
Okay.
And I'm sure you will see, or you will agree with me, that the Afenyo-Markin-led minority of 88 of us, in all humility and modesty, seems to be holding our own. And
no, that's debatable.
Well, that obviously will always be debatable. But I'm saying
debatable,
that, yes, I'm saying that from where I sit and from what I've seen in this parliament, the minority, I mean, some people have even accused the minority of being too, I don't know what word to use, but
too confrontational.
Yes. and raising too many issues.
Yes.
So by and large, the point is that to the extent of the minority holding the government accountable or responsible, I believe that this minority discharges duties quite well.
Okay.
And it's my expectation that the Afenyo-led minority is going to even do a lot more in the second meeting of Parliament. But all said and done, for the good of our country, in the collective interest of our country, for the growth of our democracy, for the progress of our country. And these should be done constructively, with the interest of the country at heart. If we have a country and we have a democracy without a minority, without a counter voice, without any scrutiny of any form or shape, power is subject. They say power corrupt, absolute power corrupt, absolutely. And therefore, you will have a government that will end up being dictatorial and that will do things which will not be in the interest of our country.
Okay.
So the minorities' work has to be done, and it will be done.
All right. Is everything okay in the MPP? I mean, after this defeat, it looks like there are a lot of wobbling incidents happening in the party.
Yes, I mean a lot of it that is going on in the party. I think by and large it's not too far from normal or too far from what should be expected. You recall that when the NDC lost in 2000, you had all kinds of turmoil. You have beginning with the issue of sole chairman and co-chairman and chairmanship race, which ended up having Dr. Obeda Samuel winning by 1 vote, and all that happened. And when President Mahama, of course, even before President Mahama, when the MPP lost in 2008, in 2009, you recall all that happened in the MPP, back and forth, you know.
Yeah.
And in 2016, when the NDC lost, you recall the Kwesi Botwe report, and all the leaks and all that happened. So to some extent, it's not too far from what is expected. And election loss is almost like having a car crash. Immediately thereafter, you get dazed, you get confused.
So you are within the days and
well, I think we've moved out of that.
Okay.
You know, but then you will have a situation where the party will have to do a lot of soul searching, and ultimately, when the internal processes are triggered and exhausted, the expectation is that when leadership emerges, both at the party national level and at the presidential candidature level, things will stabilize and normalize, and we will regroup properly and close our ranks and get on with the business of winning election 2028, which should be the overriding consideration of every party member. And I think that the MPP will rise up to the occasion when the time arises.
Are you losing your boots for something in the future?
No, I'm in Parliament.
No, I'm just...
No.
I'm just curious.
Well, we are in Parliament.
Yes.
And that's where we find ourselves, and that's where we are confined. The party will elect national executives.
Yes.
And, all kinds of names have come up, and I believe that eventually the collective wisdom of the party will prevail. And then obviously we will have to elect a presidential candidate.
Yes.
And there also you found that a good number of distinguished personalities of our party have emerged and shown interest.
Yeah.
And there also I want to believe that the collective wisdom of the party will prevail once again. Then whoever emerges, the expectation is that we'll all pull our ranks and support the person to be able to go into the crucial elections of 2028.
Would you like to be that person that support will come to go into election 2028?
Oh, how?
Would you like to be that person?
No, but that's ridiculous.
That can be ridiculous. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're not capable. No, but doesn't mean you're not capable.
Totally ridiculous.
It doesn't mean you're not capable.
Totally ridiculous.
No, it doesn't mean you're not capable.
Totally ridiculous. There are more qualified people. There are much more qualified people.
Are you qualified or not qualified?
No, not qualified.
You're not qualified?
Certainly not qualified.
Oh, okay.
There are much more qualified people.
Okay, when will you be qualified then?
I haven't thought about any of that, trust me.
Oh, really? Okay, all right.
There are much more qualified, but you've seen them come out. Ours will be to pick one of them and support them.
Which one do you have in mind as we speak?
Well, early days yet.
But I'm sure there's one that you think that can handle.
Early days yet. And
so far, we've seen like 3 of them so far.
The heavy weights and the big shots have not even declared their intention formally.
Who are these heavyweights and big shots?
Well, I will mention names, but the obvious ones have not declared their intentions yet. And so we will wait for them to formally declare their intentions.
Okay.
And then we will make up our minds one way or the other. But I'm very clear in my mind that the MPP certainly, when it's all said and done, will find a credible person, somebody who will be our standard bearer and who will be in pole position to win the election of 2028.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back.